tying a fly called the Mr. Creepo. This is a fly that uses a stinger hook. So the first thing I'm going to do is put my connecting wire, which is a 20-pound fire line. And so I'm going to put that through the eye, run it under the shank, back up over the shank and through the eye. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to tie on my rabbit strip. So I've got some olive rabbit strip here, and I'm going to tie this on using olive thread. This is UTC 140. So tie that in right there behind where the connecting line just got put on. And I'm going to split this hair right about a hook length up from about the length of a hook shank on the rabbit. And so I'm going to tie it in so that that rabbit strip goes right to the end of the hook shank and stops right about the bend. A couple soft ones and then a couple tight ones to really lash it down. And then I'm going to keep that tension. I'm going to go forward right there. Okay. Next step I'm going to do is I'm just going to whip finish that. If you can do that by hand, it makes it easy because then you can work around that, that fire wire right there. Okay, clip that off. And then pull that out. Then I'm going to put on the shank. We're going to tie that to, and I already prepared this. If you're not sure how to put dumbbell eyes on a shank or a hook, there's a lot of videos out there for that. Basically just figure eight them on there. And I'm going to switch to red because I want the front of this fly to have kind of a red mouth on it. I'll run that thread all the way back to the end of the shank. And I like really short shanks for this fly. This fly, the main thing about it and the main design idea behind it is a lot of movement from that rabbit strip. And so by having a short shank and the main body held by this fire line, you get a lot of movement out of this fly. So what we want to do is pull this back to about the length of where we want to tie it in. And I want that to be about there. This isn't a real long fly. It's not a real big fly, maybe 3 inches max, 2.5, 3 inches. Now, just a quick word about tying in this connecting line. I just go forward a little ways and then come back, double that over, call these trap wraps. Trap those back down, really tighten up on it. And I have tested this out to see, could I possibly pull that out? And I've broken a lot of really heavy duty mono or nylon and all sorts of different lines trying to get that to pull out. And you'll break 30-pound maxima before you'll pull that out of there. The connecting line will break before it comes out. So if you're still not convinced, you can always super glue it right there. Just separate that, tie it in, soft wrap, tighten up, another one, tighten up. Make sure it's in how you like it. Okay. And a few to really secure it. Pull that back, keeping it tight. Okay. Just going to use my material clip to hold that out of the way. Next thing we're going to do is tie a dubbing loop body of angel hair. So I've got a bunch of angel hair here, and as you can see, it's really long. So I want to pull these apart, pinch them, set them on top of each other, and all I'm doing here is trying to even these out. Just even the fibers out. Now this is way too long for what I want, so I'm going to set it down on the table, clip it in half. I'm going to come back, I'm going to do that again. So just pulling them apart, setting them on top of each other, pinching it. All I'm doing is kind of evening those out, making it so the ends don't just sit perfectly aligned. If I have some really long ones, I'm just going to clip those off. I don't need any super, super long fibers in here. Okay, so now I'll make my dubbing loop. Run that thread up to where I'm going to want to stop it right around in there, just short of the eyes. I'm going to wax that. Then I'll put that angel hair in there. And when I put this in, I want to just get a nice even distribution of it. I don't want a bunch of clumps sitting on top of each other, but I also don't want a bunch of gaps. So I'm just going to kind of spread that out nicely. Okay. Pinch my finger on it and give it a spin. Another spin, pinching it, holding it tight. Then I let it go. Got a little bit of that rabbit hair trapped in there. Now I'm just going to go through using my bobkin and pick out any fibers that got trapped, or at least as many as I can within reason. Then after I do this, I'm going to go through with a brush and keep brushing out and picking out as many of those as I can. If a bunch of them come out, that's fine, as long as you still have your main chunk of your dubbing loop there, just like that. So then I pull those back. And then I start wrapping forward. Okay, set those wraps on right next to each other, but not on top of each other. I'm going to wrap it in there tight, but don't build up a whole bunch of bulk. All right, just about there. Give that a couple turns. Okay. So if you wrap that stuff on top of itself, it's not going to sit in there very secure. So you want to make sure that you're not stacking up on top, because then it's not going to compress. Your thread's not going to hold it tight. Okay, so I went through with the bobkin, pulled out any trapped fibers. Now I'm just going to split those and comb them back down, because what I'm going to do next is pull over my rabbit strip. And I want to tie down right to the hide, so I'm going to split that hair right on the hide. Okay, 1, 2, 3 is probably enough. A couple in front. Clip that off. And I'm just going to go over that and smooth it all out. Okay, so we got our nice bright pearl belly, and almost everything that lives in water has a light belly and a dark top. So on all these flies, I put a lighter color of angel hair on the bottom. Okay, next step we're going to do is to tie in a piece of marabou by the tip. I'm going to tie in a white marabou, give it a little bit of contrast. Tie that in by the tip there. I'm going to grab the stem with my hackle pliers, Just kind of moisten those that marabou feather and pull the fibers back. Gentle wraps, keeping slight tension on that marabou. You don't want to manhandle it too much because that stuff will break really easy. 3 or 4 wraps of this right up behind the dumbbell eyes. And then we're going to tie off. And when I use a marabou, I like to go back over the fibers just a little bit, because those stems where you tie them in are so brittle sometimes, really small. So I don't really trust those marabou stems to hold those all together. Okay. Next step, I'm going to tie in a couple red pieces of Flashabou. Just 2 is plenty. This stuff goes a long ways in the water, so you don't need to just completely go overboard. Couple wraps there, pull around the front, couple more wraps, work back there, and I'm going to just trap those in my material clip, keep them out of the way for now. At the end, I'll trim them to size. All right, I'm going to clean up just a few of these little fibers that are sticking up from my angel hair. Okay, last material we're going to put on is going to be a cross-cut rabbit strip. And we're going to do this in a dubbing loop. And, oh, got a little piece of marabou in there. There we go. I'm going to run that right up to the front. Wax my dubbing loop. And so I like to keep the cross-cut rabbit on the hide still. And I do that in case I'm messing with it, trying to get it set, and I drop it. I can always pick it right back up from with that hide, and I'm just going to slip it right in to that dubbing loop. I'm going to set it where I want, using both hands, just pulling up. Okay, right where I want. So now what I do is I hold that tight, and I come through with my scissors. Got some kind of longer scissors for doing this, but come through with those and just cut that hide right off the side, let it drop. Okay, now I'm ready to go. Hold tight. Do not let go of this. As long as I'm sitting here holding this, I can sit here forever. If I lose tension in this, all that stuff's going to fall out. I'm going to have to start all over. So once you get your stuff in there, keep tension. Okay, it's twisting up, so I'm going to let it go a little. You can see there's a marabou fiber in there. I'm going to deal with that later. So I'll get my bobkin and pull those out of there. Okay. All right. I'm going to brush this, get rid of any bunny hairs that are just barely hanging on. I don't want them included. I want just the ones that are going to hang tough left in there. Got one he trapped one, so I'm going to try to untrap a bunch. Okay. Hold that straight up. I'm going to moisten them and pull them back a little. I'm going to do a wrap behind the eyes all the way around. Then I'm going to crisscross. I'm going to come up and over this side, down, back up this side. I cross over. I'm going to go under the eyes up here, back, and down. Pulling in tight. Okay. One more, up and over. Down to the front. I'm just going to moisten and pull this stuff back as I wrap. try to keep it tidy up there as much as I can. Okay. So then I'm going to wrap that 1, 2, 3 times. Tighten it down. A few more. After I pulled that back, I'm just going to build up a little bit of a red mouth right there. Okay. Clip off that dubbing loop. Just going to pull all those hairs back as much as I can just to clean this up. There it is. I'm going to whip finish. And then we'll give it the final touches. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the Flashabou I tied in. I'm going to cut that to length. I want that to be about back to where the hook goes. I don't want it to get caught up in the hook, so I cut those off right about the length of the hook. Okay. I'm going to grab my bobkin and I'm going to go through the hair on the head, all this rabbit hair. As I was crisscrossing and figure eighting and everything, inevitably some of that gets trapped down, so we'll just go through and free up some of that hair. You don't want to get in there super, super tight and end up pulling one of the threads out where you crossed it, so you've got to be careful about that, but just get those hairs loosened up. It looks kind of like a crazy person right now, so the reason that this fly is called the Mr. Creepo is because when I first tied this, my son was really, really young, and he was watching me tie it, and as I was putting his head on here, he's like, "Ugh, that thing's creepy." And so then he said, "You should call that Mr. Creepo." And after that, the name stuck. So, okay, last thing I like to do is, if there's any hairs that sit in front of the eyes like that, what I'll do is I'll just clip those out, give it a little haircut. Not that it really matters a ton, but I figure the Mr. Creepo wants to be able to see without hair in his eyes. The better to see you with. All right, so there it is. This olive version with the pearl belly and some white marabou on it has been a really good fly for me. A lot of times I'll tie it with kind of blue eyes or yellow eyes. Your choice. Those are small double pupil eyes. So this fly is obviously it's a stinger on a shank. I know a lot of people don't trust those types of flies because, you know, a big fish will eat the head first. But I've had good luck on this. I think a lot of times those fish will come up and they'll try to T-bone it and eat it right in the middle. And when they do that, they get that hook no problem, because it's not a real big fly. You know, these are the smallest loon scissors, and that hook is right in there. So it's, you know, only a couple inches back. So I think kind of like the Sculpzilla, the same type of thing applies. So I fish this on the swing. I strip it, give it a dying drift, fish it under sink tips, fish it on floating lines, all sorts of stuff. And I've probably caught about 50% of my streamer fish over the last few years on this fly. So tie some up and go toss them in the water and see what happens.